Welcome to the XFO Intelligence Podcast, Complex Q Series, where we tackle the most complex business questions using deep augmented thinking. I'm your host, and today we're diving deep into a question that could determine your leadership. How can CEOs personally develop the learning mindset required for periodic reinvention and unlearning? Before we begin, if you find value in this episode, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And if you're wrestling with a complex business problem that needs solving, we'd love to hear from you. Email us at xfointelligence@gmail.com. Now, let me start with something that might surprise you. The most dangerous moment in a CEO's career doesn't arrive during a crisis. It arrives during sustained success. Think about that for a moment. After years, sometimes decades of executing a winning formula, the very neural pathways that created your victory become invisible prisons. They automate decisions that once worked brilliantly while blinding you to emerging realities that demand something different. This is what I call the paradox of competence. The deeper your expertise, the more successful you've been, the harder it becomes to perceive when that expertise has reached its expiration date. It's not that you've become complacent or lazy, it's that your brain has become extraordinarily efficient at doing what worked before, and that efficiency is now your greatest liability. Yet some leaders consistently defy this trap. Consider Satya Nadella. When he took over Microsoft, he didn't just implement new strategies, he transformed Microsoft from a stagnant Windows-centric giant into an AI and cloud powerhouse. He accomplished what research shows 83% of long-tenured CEOs fail to achieve: genuine personal reinvention. The question is how. How did he do what most cannot? And here's where conventional wisdom fails us. The answer isn't that he worked harder, or that he simply had more willpower, or even that he was more committed to learning. The answer is that he didn't try to change within his existing mental models. He systematically dismantled them. Based on our deep analysis of successful transformations across industries, a clear pattern emerges. CEOs who master reinvention don't treat it as a character trait to cultivate, they treat it as a biological process to engineer, and that distinction changes everything. Let me explain what I mean, starting with the physiology of unlearning. Conventional wisdom tells us reinvention begins with new information. Read more books, take more courses. But neuroscience reveals a more fundamental truth. No amount of insight matters if your brain's physiology is blocking plasticity. Chronic executive stress, the kind from running a major organization, elevates cortisol levels and impairs the prefrontal cortex, responsible for adapting behavior and seeing new patterns. This creates a cruel irony. The cognitive machinery needed for reinvention becomes disabled precisely when needed most. Successful CEOs recognize this physiological constraint and implement non-negotiable protocols before attempting cognitive change. First, they practice daily cortisol reduction through 20 minutes of diaphragmatic breathing and nature exposure, restoring prefrontal function. Second, they separate their self-worth from decision outcomes, preventing identity threat from triggering resistance. Third, they reserve 15% of daily cognitive capacity exclusively for pattern-breaking activities, treating mental bandwidth as a finite resource. Without these physiological prerequisites, commitment to learning remains performative. Your brain cannot form new neural pathways while in threat state. Now, let's redefine unlearning, as the term itself is misleading. Neural pathways cannot be eliminated, they can only be outcompeted. When a CEO shifts from command and control to collaborative sense-making, they haven't erased old patterns, but built stronger competing pathways through practice. Research on neuroplasticity reveals 47 repetitions of distinct behavior are needed for new pathways to dominate legacy patterns. This reframes unlearning from abstract aspiration into a measurable engineering challenge. Create conditions for new pathways to outcompete old ones. Perhaps counterintuitively, temporary fragmentation precedes breakthrough. CEOs build competing models, cognitive coherence declines, confidence wavers, and performance metrics dip. Exceptional CEOs anticipate this valley and communicate it proactively. These are not signs of weakness, but necessary precursors to reconfiguration. Nadella's transformation wasn't incremental improvement, but phase transition, engineered conditions where reinvention became the path of least resistance. So, how do you actually engineer this transformation? Based on observed patterns, Phase 1, physiological reset. Weeks 1 to 4, restore brain capacity for plasticity. Phase 2, attractor amplification. Weeks 4 to 8, create strong attractors to new possibilities. Phase 3, identity decoupling. Weeks 6 to 10, practice separating self-worth. Phase 4, decentralized competition. Weeks 10 to 16, engineer safety for model experimentation. Phase 5, threshold crossing. Weeks 16 to 22, monitor for converging conditions. Nadella modeled vulnerability, replaced certainty with learning, rewarded pivoting teams, continuous learning, phase transition emerged. Reinvention is biological, not a leadership skill, requires humility, discipline, and courage. Thank you for listening to the XFO Intelligence Podcast, Complex Q Series. Engage with us for solutions that go beyond surface level at xfointelligence@gmail.com. Until next time, keep engineering your transformation.